Hey Gilberto, how's it going?
Hey man, long time no see you. How's everything going?
Good.
Hi, how are you?
Hi Julie, nice to meet you. How are you?
Nice to meet you too.
So I feel like I was just there with you in Costa Rica, but it's been a few months, right? Like I feel like it was a week ago, but it's been like 3 months or something.
Yeah man, it's been like a while,
Okay.
and also if we think about it, since the first time that you came here, that was like 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Well, at least the first time we met, like 5 years ago, till now, it felt like it was yesterday. Life goes so fast.
Yeah. Do you remember that the first time I met you? It was a very funny experience. I was like we were trying to talk about it and understand what exactly happened, a few months ago when I saw you again. But the first time I met you, I was in Costa Rica on an assignment, and I was just driving around the country basically, as I seem to do every few years now. And I want to say like we connected on social media, or somebody introduced us, and I was kind of coming in your direction, and you're like, "Yeah, just stop by." And like I didn't know what that meant, other than like, "Yeah, I'll stop by." And so I drove like in between. I was like coming from the north on my way to San Jose, and at the time you were in, where were you living at again?
So I was living in my parents' house in
Right.
Desamparado de Alajuela. That's a tiny town, 15 minutes away from the airport,
Yeah.
to call
Okay.
it
You were in
somehow.
Alajuela, so
Hmm.
kind of outside of San Jose, central Costa Rica. And I get there, and then we just like go up to a volcano and make carnitas and eat tacos, and like had some beers, and with like this whole crew of people you had with you,
Hmm.
and you like got out your guitar and start singing, and it was funny because I had no idea what to expect, and like within for like an hour I just had this weird experience with all these people I didn't know, and I don't know. It was fun. I just had this very like nice, positive idea of you from that moment, and
Hmm.
that stayed with me. So I've been glad to kind of see you again and again over the years since that, and see what you've been doing. So let's talk about what you've been doing. So right now you're in Guanacaste, the kind of beach area of Costa Rica. It's where all the kind of major tourism developments have been over the last 10 years, I guess, and a lot of kind of motivation of things happening there is kind of ongoing. And you moved there, what, like 3 years ago, something like that?
I literally moved here 6 years ago. It was,
6 years ago? Shit.
see,
Okay.
like 5, 6 years ago. Yeah, it's been a while since then.
Okay.
Actually, after we met in San Jose, after we went to the volcano and we do this kind of picnic, like
Hmm.
6 months later, I moved to Guanacaste.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And you have a project. It's called Road Less Traveled,
Yes.
RLT Cuisine. Can you
Yes.
explain what that is?
Well, it is a business model that for me is a bit difficult to explain, but I always say to everybody that we are in the experience businesses, in the experience business. So that means that we mostly cook outdoors for a group of people, but we also do private events in people's houses. We have a kitchen where we turn into a four-seated restaurant every night. So we do a little bit of everything, culinary wise. However, since the very beginning of the project, we always wanted to support the local community by just doing local food.
Okay. Yeah, you explain that well. But the thing, it's hard to define exactly it is what you're doing, which I think makes it the most interesting. First of all, Road Less Traveled is a reference to the Robert Frost poem, I took the road less traveled. And this is definitely not like a typical restaurant concept in any form, although you do have a four-seat restaurant, sort of. I mean, not sort of. I mean, technically you do. I mean, you have a four-seat restaurant inside
Mhm.
of your kind of food lab, the hub of your business, I guess. Like that's kind of
Ye-
where all the prep is done, and it's just a small kitchen with four counter seats.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
and I mean technically that's the restaurant part of it. That's kind of the
exactly.
most normal functioning aspect of it.
Hmm.
But it's definitely that part of it is what fraction of your business?
Mm, I have to say is mostly like 35% of it. And I think the reason why is because we don't promote it at all. So people just s- I think they find us either on Reddit or word of mouth, and they kind of make a reservation and they book a place where they don't even know where what they're gonna have for dinner, or as you were mentioned before, like they came here and they don't have any expectations, or they just take the road less travel and they come and find this small tiny little kitchen that is run by local chefs, and at the end of the day they kind of receive a surprise, and that's pretty much the whole concept of it. Most of our or the core business model of our company, of my startup, is basically private events, private catering services, and outdoor cooking. But however, the place where I feel more like comfortable doing is cooking whatever I feel that moment in my kitchen, and it makes no sense sometimes. But for me, it makes me feel like alive,
No, so when I came the last time, I sat down at the restaurant, you know, and there were three other people there who I didn't know, which was fine, but and it was what, 9 courses?
Yeah, we usually serve nine
Nine
courses
courses.
in
Okay,
the food lab. Yeah,
and
and
go ahead.
and that's also the beautiful part of it, is that sometimes with couples come here or solo travelers find us and they decide to make a reservation with us, they ended up meeting different people in the kitchen. Because if you think about it, as we don't have any marketing strategy to bring people in, uh, every single one of the customers that we have, somehow they share something in common, even though they don't know. And it's the fact that they are looking for hidden gems, where to eat and where to experience something different than just a regular restaurant. The other day, for example, we received an email from an old client that told us, uh, thanks to your uh, experience at the food lab, I had the chance to meet this other lady who became my lawyer, and you have no idea how helpful she is right now with me and my businesses. And I was like,
Okay,
wow, we actually created a impact in somebody's heart, So that's very meaningful for us as well.
and so Guanacaste. Let's just pull back a little. The food there, at least along the beach, has been pretty shitty for years. Like I've written about this a few times, but some of the worst meals I've ever had have been at beach restaurants in Costa Rica, just because they're just people that don't know what they're doing. They really have no inspiration to run a restaurant or cook, but they end up just like buying an old restaurant and they want to retire or something, and they just like throw this weird menu together that has like salmon on it and burritos, and it's just a bunch of things that don't make a lot of sense for being in, this country where there's amazingly fresh food and farmers markets all around you, and
Hmm.
artisan fishermen right there, you know on the other side of Guanacaste, and in the Nicoya and everywhere else. And it's just weird no one's ever used that.
Yeah.
But now it's like things are starting to change, and there's a lot of other people starting to take Costa Rican food, look at it with more depth, and even in Guanacaste, I your friend, what's his name, Valario at Waka's,
Uh-huh.
right? Yeah, yeah. It's
See,
like
he's doing a
I had an
great job
amazing
in
meal there
Nosara.
at
Hmm.
Waka's in Nosara, right? It's in
Yes.
Nosara, yeah, in Nosara, and this is like an amazingly rich country in terms of its cuisine, and the amount of biodiversity and the freshness of the product and the accessibility of some amazing ingredients is just, it's really abundant, and nobody's done shit with it. So it's like and you can't just come in there and build a 12-seat Michelin level counter style restaurant and expect people to get it. I think you have to do something that's a little more adaptable and a little more
Yes.
creative to kind of make it work.
Definitely. The interesting thing for me is that if we have more local chefs that have your mindset, uh, I think the whole province would be different and would actually create a better and a bigger impact to the local economy. However, I do consider that at least in the coastline of the country, um, a big percentage of the restaurants or business are 100% commercial, or they are developed with a commercial purpose, and they have no value more than feeding potatoes and burgers to tourists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I One of my favorite videos from old times is Ferran Adrian talking about. Uh, he's making a comparison between the culinary world and a bunch of grapes. So while he's talking, he's removing grapes from the whole vine, and he's telling to his crowd like, well, let's imagine that this amount of restaurants that symbolize this amount of grapes are actually commercials, and those are the shitty ones, and those are uh, the
Mm-hmm.
institutions and schools. And at the end of the talk, he ended up with just one little seed from a whole vine of grapes, and then he ended up saying like, this is the kind of restaurants that are trying to generate an impact. But if you compare the seed with the whole vine, it's probably nothing, right? But the beautiful thing is that what happened with that seed is that if you throw it away, you can grow multiple vines. Um, and that you see from very back in the day, with the relationship of chefs and apprentices. Of course, not everybody had the chance to create a more meaningful approach to food, or nobody, or unfortunately not everybody is using food as a tool to actually generate a impact. um, but yeah, we can see that in the whole province. Most of the restaurants here, they don't care about quality. Most of the restaurants here are basically a copy of doing easy stuff from the major suppliers around here, and chefs are used to just raise their phones and make some phone calls to get whatever they want just to ensemble it in their kitchens.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I also think that the amount of businesses that are owned by Costa Ricans in the coastline of Guanacaste, at least in this area, are just a minority. We're pretty sure that we are a minority in the area. Most of the restaurants here are owned by people from other countries that they don't have the values that we have, or they don't have the vision, or it's quite different. It's quite interesting when we think about it. The local restaurants that you can find here in the area are the local sodas. The
Mhm.
usually the backyard of someone who has been living in the area for ages, and with limited resources, they open a kitchen that serves breakfast and lunch. However, uh, the infrastructure that you can find in sodas, and the investment that the people do in sodas is way lower than an investment that someone do for to build in a fancy restaurant in a fancy place and to just deliver burgers and fries.
Yeah, yeah, and it's crazy. And the sodas are amazing. Like we've talked about this a lot, but like the sodas are so good, and they're such a reflection of regional food in Costa Rica. But then, like as you said, along the beachfront, along all these places where everybody's going, in places like Nicoya, which is a blue zone, one of the healthiest places on earth to eat, people aren't eating the products from the zone. And
Mm.
that's mind blowing to me. In places like Santa Teresa, where this like model of healthy lifestyle, like you don't see anyone eating corn, squash, and beans. You know, it's
It's
like
crazy.
it's insane to me that they're there in this place in the most beautiful rainforest imaginable, and they're eating acai bowls and shit like that.
Yeah.
Not to knock acai, but I mean it has a place, but just probably not so much in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question about that too. It's always puzzling why to try to understand why in places that are so biodiverse, especially especially a place like Costa Rica, so close to the beach and the rainforest with all these offer of uh, fruits and vegetables. For what you remember, why local people were not eating naturally all these, or they were, because tourism, it's a different phenomenon, and maybe you can explain that in a different way. But I was curious too about locals. Were they eating these things before, but we don't know, or they so these fruits are something that it doesn't have a status. So, this denial about what it's in the place, wanting what it's coming from outside that we know it's part of it. But I don't know. I'm just curious if it is true that locals were not actually eating these things, because I mean generalizations about this are dangerous too, right? Like no one was eating this before and these fruits were not known.
Mm.
Is that true? Maybe it's something in between for what you remember and what you have studied, apart from people coming to these hotels. I'm curious about locals before, at least, and now.
Well, I've been in the area since 6 years ago, and all the information that I can collect by talking with local people is that indeed back in the day, life used to be more simple, and they used to have more land to grow their own things.
Mm.
However, well, people started selling land. Big hotels started creating massive projects. Uh, Eventually, Guanacaste became a touristic center, and it doesn't matter if you had horses or you were a bilingual teacher, you ended up working for tourism. And the massive growth that Guanacaste had, and the land that the locals lost by selling to others, actually affected the way they feed themselves. And the first time I came to Guanacaste, I was like 4 years old. My uncles, they used to own a property by Liberia. I remember that that farm didn't have electricity. That farm didn't have any drinkable water. We used to go there to camp as a family, as a, I mean, not even like for a social media break, because social media was not even a thing, but just like to get away far from the city. And it was a beautiful journey. I remember that we used to cook in the open fire in that farm. They used to grow corn and beans, and they even used to hunt some stuff that I cannot mention public. But it was quite fun, you know. But after my early ages, Guanacaste trips, or the trips that I used to do when I was a kid, like a 5 year old kid, that was the memories that I have, you know, more like into the wild kind of thing. But now when you come here, or since the early 2000s, when you come here, you could see McDonald's and Burger Kings and Papa John's and whatever, all those big chains. And eventually, you I personally think that this blue zone idea of Guanacaste is not real. It's more like a marketing strategy to make people buy land
Yeah.
here. You know, that's, it sounds sad, you know, but that's personally what I think about it, because how come
Yeah.
you call a blue zone a place where there's a Subway, a Domino's Pizza, a KFC, a Burger King, and McDonald's in the same block, sabes? And it's all concrete, so it doesn't make any sense, at least
Mm.
for me. And you have to go very deep to find real food, and it's very sad, the fact that only the old ladies who has this wisdom and knowledge, um, is probably the last generation of people that we will have with that knowledge, you know. um, Back in the day, we used to heal our bodies with plants, with herbs, with local herbalism medicine. But now you see drugstores and pharmacies everywhere. So that approach to nature and food, and the concept that the food can actually heal you is kind of getting lost.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's sad, but it is also nice to see different cooks doing their things from their kitchens, to try to doesn't let that tradition pass away.
No, I agree. I think as sad it is, I think it just means there are big opportunities, you know, to do something with that thing. There are still these old women, like the woman in Guatil, who, you
Maria
know,
Elena.
Maria Elena, who's makes the arroz de maíz that will, you know, cure anything, I'm sure. And, you know, and these people that still kind of hold on to these traditions and are still there, and they can still have a voice, and, you know, and help guide what comes next, instead of, you know, the people in at Barcelo, or whatever, I don't know, whatever big chain hotel that is
Mhm.
dictating land use. And yeah, it's opportunity. And I think you can't just come in as a fine dining chef and change things with 10 people a night, but you can. I think what you're doing is spreading a lot of different ideas in a lot of different
Mhm.
ways, which makes it super interesting to me, because I don't think a lot of people have kind of tried what you're doing. And so, taking a step back, like, what's day to day going on at like peak season in your operation? Like, aside of people coming in, 4 people a night to dinner
Mhm.
inside the food lab, what's kind of the operation look like?
Well, man, the beautiful thing is that from this is not Gilberto as a chef talking, is Gilberto as entrepreneur talking.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing about this project is that I didn't made a business plan to make it happen. At the very, very beginning, it was just me cooking for different clients. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the knowledge to ask for money. I come from a very humble family, so my parents, they couldn't support me financially. They supported me with good vibes and good energies like nobody else. But um, that's the reason why when I came to Costa Rica after almost 5 years traveling around the world and doing internships, I wanted to have a restaurant, but I didn't know how to get the money to open a restaurant. So I started working. Actually, I started doing pop-ups in my parents' house in Desamparado de la Juela, and that's how we met.
Yeah, right.
Um,
What was that called?
it was called Vestigio.
Vestigio. It was just like you and your
Uh-huh.
friends doing
Uh-huh.
pop-ups at your parents' house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the
Okay.
reason why I did those pop-ups is it was because it was very difficult for me to to get a job, um, because nobody put attention to my resume. My resume was basically this 19-year-old guy that work in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Spain, France, Chile, Bolivia, Argentina, Peru, and Brazil in 4 years. Like I was jumping from one place to another one every 4 months for visa purposes. So nobody paid attention to my curriculum, and I started doing pop-ups and recorded them and uploading my videos on to LinkedIn because I wanted someone to see what I was capable of doing. That's how I ended up in Guanacaste, because the CEO of a major project here saw the videos and they actually hired me as a creative chef for the company. And it was the first time in my life working corporate and also making money, because all the internships that I had, I was basically working for fun. Um, so the reason why I started this project is because I started cooking private for my clients, and eventually my agenda became saturated. So I hired someone to help me with the cleaning. Then I hired someone to help me with the cutting and dicing. Then I hired someone to help me with the cooking. Out of nowhere, I had to hire someone to help me with the bookings and the managing of the business because I was getting crazy managing my emails and stuff. I hated that. Um, and then we were making um, we were making a decent amount of money working every single day, and I was burned out with payrolls and pains, you know,
Mhm.
paying people to do. So I had a conversation with my mom. My mom is an accountant, and she decided to enroll my company before my company was a thing. It was just Gilberto cooking, and she became my CFO. And since she came to my business, I had the feeling that before my mom came and after my mom came, uh, we made this jump from being a small business to an actual company. And right now we're 12 people working here in the Road Less Traveled Cuisine, which is a lot. And we started 2 years ago. The beautiful thing is that during the high season, a regular day is we have four different uh, parties outside where all of the groups that hire our services, they choose one of our menus. Um we don't have a lot of menus, but we do love to tell the stories, and we do love to make tasting menus. And we also think that that's the best way you can do to actually brag about the food that you have here. Um, uh, and it kind of makes sense because it's fun to do it. We don't do fine dining with these fancy techniques. No, brother, do we just put the right amount of food in the right presentation in the table. We don't complicate that much. We just try to make things as tasty as possible.
But I mean, it's not
And
like there's no caviar luxury ingredients anywhere. It's just local products, right? Like, I mean, some of them just things from local farms. Some things you forage, and you
exactly,
just you just create menus out of them.
the seafood changes every single day, and we have. Uh, I always say it in Espanol. that we have a columna vertebral. We have a spine. We have
An
a
access.
spine,
Mm, it's
an
fine.
axis,
It's
and
fine. Yeah.
a spine,
Okay.
and then we change things every day. Um,
But how will you describe the way you were cooking when you started with Gilberto cooking and the seed of this, and in contrast with now, or it's pretty much the same? What do you think about that?
well, I empower my staff, and I try to work on them uh, as a leader, not as a chef. I doesn't propose things in my kitchen like from the ego point of view of a chef. I don't want them to emulate my recipes. I also want them to feel creative and do um, whatever they consider is the best for each product that we have. So, of course, from a business point of view, there are some dishes that we can play around and do different things every single day. There are some others that are like our classics that people are expecting, so we keep them the way they are. But we understand that by living in this tiny beach town of Guanacaste, where we don't have the infrastructure of delivery that well organized. It forces us to be creative and change and adapt to whatever nature provides us. For example,
Mhm.
we never ever ever decorate or garnish dishes with microgreens. But we go to the beach and we collect porcelain and we put like tiny little porcelain on top of things, and it actually make a lot of sense more than just buying a tray of plastic and microgreens to make a dish look pretty. Um,
Mhm.
but that's like in the high season we cook outside in nature. We cook at people's houses. We have double seating at our food lab. Sometimes we even do cooking classes that allowed us to communicate directly with people about the exuberant abundance of products that Guanacaste has. And it's a very flexible business model. The interesting thing is that I've realized that it's sort of a new business model for the chefs that are working for me, because the first day they come to work, they are expecting a rush of service. And we don't have a rush of service. We don't have lunchtime. We don't have, we're not expecting X amount of people for dinner all at once. We don't have, it's not a restaurant vibe. It's more, we have all day to prepare mise en place, to organize ourselves, to do a lot of meetings, and it allowed us to cook something personal with an intention for the group of people that we're cooking. And also, the beautiful thing about that is that by cooking with an intention, you can put so much love and passion to everything you do, because you can organize yourself as whew, in an incredible way. And also, we adapt every single one of our recipes if someone is vegan or gluten free or has any dietary restrictions, and it makes the experience more intimate and personalized, and that's kind of fun.
Kind of.
Sometimes it's not that fun, but it is fun.
Um.
Good.
So I mean,
Nick.
what? Yes. Sorry. Were you going?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, was your experience? So you spent like 4 years at all these top restaurants around the world, like amazing ones, like Faviken, right? Or Faviken,
Mm.
Dom, all these places in France and things. Did and I mean, you learned to cook at a very high level, but then you came back to Costa Rica. I mean, was that experience? Did it turn you off from cooking at that way? Did you realize when you were at all these places
Mhm.
that no, I don't want a restaurant like that?
Then it is very interesting. Yesterday, I was talking to some of my friends, um, And I was telling them that traveling is such an important thing for me. Cooking and traveling is they both are my biggest passions, because the beautiful thing about traveling is that when you return home, you feel that everybody is like the same, but your mindset changes a lot, and you have a better understanding of on life. Um, Fabican, for example, was a place that changed my mind. Um, and if you think about it, I had to go to the very, very end of the world to understand the value of local cuisine. When I was in Fabican foraging for mushrooms, for herbs, for berries in the middle of the woods, I was thinking about the time when I was younger and I used to arrive to my parents' house, opening the fridge and telling my dad, "Dad, come on, there's nothing to eat here." And I remember that my dad, he used to grab a machete. Ojo, that we used to live in the city, my, bueno, near to the airport. It's not the rural community, in the city, my. And he used to grab his machete, cut a guanábana, which is a soursop, some yuca, some sugar cane, some limes from the garden, some green mangoes, and he used to make me like a mango ceviche, a guanábana smoothie,
Wow.
fried cassava, and he was telling me like, "Mae, there's food outside. You just need to go and grab it." At that time, I felt that I was insulted by my dad. But he was giving me a life lesson. He told me about farm to table before farm to table was actually a thing. And I have to go all the way to Sweden to freezing my ass off to realize how valuable was what my dad was doing back in the day. So of course I came to I came to a state of mind where I have the feeling in my heart that I needed to return to Costa Rica. It was not easy to start cooking in Costa Rica because I came from the Disneyland of restaurants to my my parents' backyard, man. And so, of course, those men. I also realize how important is to be a good leader, because in those restaurants where I used to work, every single chef that used to work with me at that time when I was an intern, right? Every single one of them, they were like a million times better than me. So there was a beautiful competition inside those restaurants that push you to become the better version of yourself. Right now, these days, some of those chefs that I used to work with, they now have a Michelin star. They are now in top rankings of restaurants. They continue with their projects. They don't work for chefs anymore. Now they are the chefs. Now they have their own proposals from their kitchen, and that's very inspiring. But here in Costa Rica, yeah, I had this kind of reality shock when I first came to Guanacaste and I started working with a group of people inside a old, dirty, disgusting kitchen. And nobody even said oído, or
Yeah.
there was no just chef culture. And I was like, oh my god, my! I came from the champions, like the Champions League of football to third division, team wise.
But so you weren't a rich kid traveling the world working in all these restaurants. Your parents essentially, they rented out a room in their house, and with that money they gave you, and they rented it out like on Airbnb. So like that income from this went to you for your culinary education as you see fit, which I think is like a beautiful, lovely gesture. But and then you go, you work in all these fancy restaurants, but some of them, they were like complete dicks. They were, like you told me one experience you had where you went to like I think a 3 Michelin star restaurant, and we don't have to say what it is unless you want to. That they basically saw you and they were just like, just clean the trash can with this toothbrush or something like that. But at the same time, you just kind of shrugged it off and you still got a lot out of that experience. Could you explain like what you were thinking when you meet these people like this, and like what did you do to kind of get something out of it?
Hmm.
Oh my
I
god,
think something
again.
Frozen
happened with
again.
his
Yeah.
So
signal.
Okay.
where did it end at?
You're back.
It's in,
Could you
in the
Yeah,
explain? You were
could you
saying,
just
could you
it's in,
explain,
explain?
what was your mindset in these situations?
well, basically when I immersed myself into this kind of um, environment, my daily motivation was, uh, well, I'm the one making the decision to be here, and there's two ways of seeing the situation. I can either be mad and upset because I'm cleaning a garbage room with a toothbrush on my knees for 18 hours a day, or I can use this time to understand what's going on in the restaurant. So I started a mental game while cleaning the garbage room, and I was trying to memorize how many freezers they had in the restaurant, which brands those freezers were, what time does the macro truck, the suppliers arrive, um, who was the chef, the party, what he was doing. And I also like from the very bottom of the garbage truck, I was like just trying to understand every single detail of their business model. And that mindset let me survive in that environment for a long time. At the end of the day, the beautiful thing about doing internships in these worldwide known restaurants is that you can work anywhere in the world after working there. It is crazy how many doors can be open in front of your eyes if you just push yourself to the limit and you do your best in this kind of environment. So at the end of the day, of course, it was. Uh, I've learned so many things, and I also remember these days how I was feeling back in the day, and that also helped me as a motivation to how not to treat my staff. Um, for example, one of those restaurants, a staff meal was uh, bones with water, bones with water, and like pasta in a big pot, and it was like a prison. Um, I remember one of the sous chefs telling me like, "Do you know how much money does the government spend per prisoner per day in a prison?" Well, us here in the restaurant, we spend way less than that. And I was like, wow. But then I came to Faviken, and it was a whole different thing. A staff meal in Faviken, man, it was the best meals I ever had in my life. Uh, and that also, talking about the relationship that chef and mentors have. Uh, well, these days in my business model here in Guanacaste, we hire a local lady to become our staff meal chef. So she's daily making us beautiful home cooking meals for the whole staff. Um, a lot of my clients are business people, so they don't get about emotions. They just understand money really well. Some of them criticize the fact that I spend payroll and resources to feed my staff, you know. But I always tell them that there's a lot of things that you can't measure, and it's just by seeing how motivated and happy everybody is with just a home cooking meal a day. So it's all about the mindset that you use to see the opportunities where everything is dark and shitty.
Yeah,
Um,
no, like I was wondering because you have such like a positive outlook and you treat everyone so well, and I was going to mention you specifically hired the local woman to cook staff meal that you must have found or thought about a better way of doing things because not everyone is able to brush off the people telling them to clean the trash can. or clean the trash room. There what is going on? Is that a thunderstorm or what?
It's just for people to know that's the rain, right, Gilberto?
See, my is
Like
well.
storm, stormy rain.
Can you hear the storm from here?
Yeah. That's why I
Well,
wanted to mention something. Yeah,
it is raining like crazy right now.
tropical, tropical rain.
See,
It is affecting
My
Nick's
God.
connection, apparently. It is traveling far away.
Yeah, I know. Like, but where's
The
the
rain is
storm? Who's
affecting your
in Costa
connection.
Rica? Okay, like it's that hard that
Costa Rica.
it's
see,
ruining my internet connection.
nice, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
No,
affecting you.
but
It's
as I
traveling
was
all the
saying,
way
it's
up.
just like not everyone. Like a lot of people get totally turned off of cooking when they experience that kind of environment. So
Uh,
yeah, I think you were a lucky one. I think you. My God.
you cut off, Nick.
I was just saying that a lot of people get turned off of cooking when they experience that kind of environment. So I think you were very fortunate that you went into it with the right mindset of, these motherfuckers are never going to bring me down. But I think you were lucky, you know.
See, imagine that when I was um back in the day when I was intern in this kind of restaurants, I get to the point that I was physically unable to do things. I was feeling extremely tired. Um, I was not physically prepared or mentally prepared for that. So it was challenging for me. But also, my motivation was that I was thinking maybe one day I'll be able to have my own little restaurant by the beach in Costa Rica and I will definitely have fun. Uh, so, also, by being in the shit, uh, I
Mhm.
manifest what I'm having right now. And I'm enjoying every second of it. And it's thanks of the of the situations or the reality that I live back in the day. And I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about leadership and mentoring because now I have to improve my leadership skills to run and to delegate more to my team and to become a better leader. And I remember listening to a podcast about this guy who was talking about happiness. And the only reason why we can define happiness is because life goes ups and downs. If if fulfillment was like a thing, like our daily basics, we would have we probably don't would have known that is another state of mind before after fulfillment. So the only reason why we can perceive happiness and fulfillment is because life goes ups and down, and when you're in the bottom, you actually desire to be happy again, and when you're happy, you don't want to go down. But if life goes down, you can just need to learn how to surf that
That's
wave
a
and
very
go with the
That's a
flow.
very Costa Rican
And
way of
that's kind
explaining
of the mind.
things. Like pulling surfing into it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Where do you see yourself in
that's the
like 10
way.
years? Or see this project?
Man, I do imagine that our next step is going to be a farm, and I think that our mission as a business is definitely incentivize the culinary tourism in this area of the country, as many other chefs are trying um, from their kitchens in different places. And I think we are manifesting a farm right now so hard because we want to grow vegetables, and we want to hire local ladies, and we want to have the possibility of running a farm and running a bigger version of the food lab, uh, but also with the goals, objectives, and mindset that we have right now, so we can impact more people and we can create a better impact to the local community. Uh, Running a farm or growing vegetables is something that is far of my understanding, but I do believe that it's going to be a beautiful challenge for the rest couple of years. Um, and that's how we imagine the
Okay.
future here in Guanacaste.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have yeah, which is I mean, as we have discussed in other conversations, a way of understanding that the restaurant is just part of a whole ecosystems that chefs are, helping to create, develop, evolve, and it's just more evident every day that it's a door to a whole ecosystem, and that a channel to, in this case, a farm, and a whole bed for more sustainable spaces, right? But I had a question about Costa Rican food, and we, I think we, by now, we are used to hear that Latin American food is all connected, and we Latin Americans feel at home in other countries because yes, we have some different accents, and but we are connected and we are the same, and we all feel pretty comfortable in other countries, right, of Latin America. But I was wondering if how would you describe Costa Rican food? Because as much as we share ingredients across the region, and as hard as it is to describe Peruvian food between the top 10 known, dishes, and Colombian food and all these ones, I want to ask you about that. I know it's not an easy question, but I was
Mm.
wondering.
Costa Rican food for me is friendly, spontaneous, and healthy. Um, Everybody has its own version of it. Um I do have the belief that for the mainstream, for most of us, Costa Rican food is difficult to explain, because we all have this misconception that Costa Rican food is rice and beans plated in different presentations, mix
Yeah.
it together, or with coconut, or you know. Um, but for me, like, healthy, spontaneous, and friendly are like the adjectives that can describe more the the way of eating here. Hospitality, for example, is something that makes Costa Rican food beautiful. Um, and you can see that when you travel to a countryside house, or when you go to a grandma's house, and you see that even though whatever they have in the fridge is humble, they will treat you as a king or a princess because they want to make you feel special.
Yeah, and if anything, is there something you, in these trips and invitations to other chefs, Latin American chefs, to cook with you in their own restaurants? If anything, there is something you would say, this is only Costa Rican. This is a way we do things that I haven't seen, in South America or other countries in Central America or the islands. Something.
Mm, that's a really good question. Every time that I travel, I always
You look
cook.
for the similarities.
Exactly. But every time that I travel to cook somewhere, I
Yeah,
always try to cook something that
What
represents
do you cook?
my country, right?
yeah,
And for
yeah.
example, when I was in Colombia a couple of months ago, I made pastelitos,
Pastelitos,
and
I saw.
those pastelitos, basically, I used to eat pastelitos when I used to live in Alajuela, You can go to a local window. You can buy a pastelito for 1,000 colones, which is like $2, and they give you a
Mhm.
fresco de cas in a bag of plastic with a straw, and you're eating in the streets a fried pastel stuffed with potatoes
Mm.
and a fresco, and that's the most delightful lunch that you can have under $3, by the way. And I feel that they are sponsoring me by saying that, but it's actually really good. Uh, However, I can say that pastelitos belong to Costa Rica because I've seen different versions of pastelitos in Guatemala, in Nicaragua, in Colombia, and they
Yeah.
seem to be everywhere as well.
Tricky.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Same with picadillos. Picadillos basically is this old fashioned grandma recipe where they get onions and peppers and garlic and tomatoes and they dice everything within green bananas or hearts of palm or cassava or papa or whatever root vegetable that they have in their backyards, and they do some sort of a stew-ish kind of thing with local vegetables, but it's
But the
nothing.
magical thing is like they taste different. I mean, when you describe that or a pastelito, that's pretty much an empanada in Bogota, or but it
See.
tastes different. It's not the same flavor. It is not.
Mhm.
It's is it you can describe it and it sounds the same,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's the terroir. I don't know if it's the proportion of ingredients or just a change on the flour. I don't know. It's just fascinating that it's the same, but it is not. It
See,
is
at
not.
the end of the day, um, food is a representation of people's flow. They cook with energy, and it's like
Yeah.
music. You can read a partitura and you can play just by reading something, or you can cook just by following a recipe.
Hmm.
But everybody has its own soul and flow to add to a recipe to make it taste better or different at some point. Um, and that's also what I think it makes Costa Rican food beautiful, delightful. The other day I went to Rincon de la Vieja. That's a volcano outside of Liberia, and I met this local lady who was making a marmalade with tomate de palo.
Hmm.
Tomate de
The árbol.
palo,
Yeah.
tomate de árbol, and she was cooking the tomate de árbol with cinnamon, with cloves, with nutmeg, and she was waiting for the right consistent to stop stirring that pan. And in the meanwhile, in another pot, she had some chicharrones, and I ended up in that house because I was going to buy dragon fruits. So imagine, I went to a dragon fruit farm, and then the lady told me, or she realized that I was a cook. So she invited me to her house, and then she told me, like, oh, I'm preparing this. Can you guess what it is? And I was like, wow, it's the first time I ever see somebody making a tomate de árbol marmalade. Oh, you have to taste my chicharrones. They were really tasty. And I ended up having lunch in a completely stranger house, having chicharrones, yuca, and marmalade, tomate de árbol para postre. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like the fun part of being here that everybody's super friendly, everybody's super welcoming. And it's not only about the food, it's about the hospitality and how they make you feel or how they treat you. And yeah, it's fun. It's beautiful. And that only
No, that's
happened
not
like in
true,
Latin
dude.
American countries,
Come
I
on, wait,
guess.
you just went to West Virginia.
Yeah.
Weren't those just like the nicest people we've ever met? I'm sure everywhere you
Man,
went.
man, West Virginia was what a beautiful place, for God's sake. I felt that I was in Costa Rica. I mean, I've never been there during the winter. That will be another story. But at least during summertime, I felt like at home.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it is also you were on a farm. You were on
Yeah.
Mike's farm. Do you want to talk about like what you guys did, what you cooked?
Yeah, sure. The the reason why I ended up in West Virginia is because 2 years ago we had this beautiful couple that hired our services here in Costa Rica to cook for them, and they realized that I have a Anthony Bourdain picture in my kitchen. It's like a black and white frame. It's kind of like an altar for Anthony Bourdain. And when they came here, they immediately changed their faces, and they told me about what they do for a living. They have a farm in West Virginia that became trendy because Anthony Bourdain recorded a episode of Parents Unknown back in the day. So we immediately became connected, and we talked for hours and hours and hours and hours. And two
No,
years
just to
later,
be
they
clear,
invited me to West Virginia to
this
cook
is
for them,
Lost Creek Farm
but to cook
in
with
West
them.
Virginia. Oh.
Beautiful, beautiful project. And well, Mike, the chef, and I, uh, we planned this whole menu for 3 months. He wanted to make things that reminds him about Costa Rica, but with West Virginia products. So we ended up making a version of salchipapas, which is a street food recipe. It's just like a bunch of fries and a bunch of sausages all together with a lot of sauces. It's so unhealthy, but the some restaurants that are open after hours, 12 to 3 o'clock in the morning, is the only thing they sell. So we did a version of a local bologna that we made with rabbit things and these local potatoes that we peel and grate and cook like for 24 hours, and then we made like this twist of the salchipapa version, and it was so funny. Then the pastelitos that I love because it reminds me of my hometown, we made them in West Virginia, but we stuffed them with rabbit that they hound from their farm. We ended up making a recipe of arroz de maíz with their corn, more like a pozole kind of thing, but with their corn. So it was the corn from the farm, but the Guanacaste flavor of the stew. Um, it was so fun. I I've realized that food, it is probably the only thing that make me feel in the present. Because when I was cooking in West Virginia, for example, I used to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and cooking straight till 11 o'clock p.m. Sometimes even 2 o'clock in the morning. And I remember that my friend who was recording the whole process, um, he told me like, bro, you've been here cooking like for 15 hours and you are not even drinking water. Are you thirsty? And I was like, man, sorry, forget about that. I'm just too focused to be true. And it's like the only thing ever that makes me feel like in the present, in the moment. It's like yoga for me. So it's
So
quite fun.
you mentioned somebody there recording you. Like, social media has been a big part of your cooking for forever. Like, since I've known you, since that day on the mountain, there was somebody there, like, with a camera. Like,
Yeah.
like,
See,
what are your thoughts about it? Like, why is that so important to, like, always have someone there? Like, don't you have a full-time person on staff at RLT doing, like, helping with, like, TikTok videos and things like that?
now we hired someone full time for our TikToks and videos. I think it's inevitable. Is something that you have to do if you want to spread the word. At the end of the day, the we don't have money to promote ourselves in billboards. We don't have the money to hire magazines to talk about what we do. Um, we don't have the impact to be on television, or television is another thing I don't personally like, but we found on social media a way to communicate. And the beautiful thing is that we actually don't use social media to sell anything. We just tell stories. We just
Right,
tell
right.
people what
There's
we
nothing
do
about your
from a very
services,
humble
anything like
point of
that.
view. You
It's
know.
just stories about what you're doing in Costa Rica. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And some stories are fun. Some stories are just point of views of the one of is basically everything we're doing every day. We don't fake anything. We just record. We are there with our phones, and we make spontaneous clips about the day in a life in our kitchen, day in a life in this startup, all the beauty and the dark side of having a startup, and we have fun by documenting that. And it's very funny that you tell about the time that we were in
Yeah.
the hills that there was a guy recording with a camera and taking photos. Well, that guy is one of my best friends. The same way I decided to become a entrepreneur, he was also starting recording at that time. So he needed, first of all, he wanted to help me recording the events that I was doing, but he
Mhm.
also needed content to start his own project. A few years later, he became really good at it, and he opened his own business, and he is now one of the best video producers in the country, and he's making ads for big companies, and he's having a great impact by creating videos. One of my personal goals and victories is that back in the day, he was recording me like for free, but I promised him like 7 years ago, one day I will make money and I will hire you officially, you know. And this trip to West Virginia was the first time that I could actually hire him as a client. And I told him like, bro, remember that 7 years ago I told you that I wanted to hire you like to record an event? Well, now I have the chance to hire you. Charge me if I was a client, and I'm gonna fly you to West Virginia. I want you to cover this thing that I don't even know what we're gonna do, but it's gonna be fun. So also, that's a beautiful victory that I had. He believed in me since the very early stages of my project, and we are now
All right,
supporting each
man.
other doing
That's great.
beautiful
I'm
stuff.
glad to hear all your success
Yeah.
and how everything keeps going in like a positive direction. Like since I've met you, and it's good to talk with you because I know it's always going to be positive, and you're going to be like smiling and happy, and like and very Costa Rican in like the best way. Julie, do you have any other questions
Mm.
about anything?
Que funny.
No, no, that's exactly my sense too,
All right,
and
man.
that's great.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. It's just we need more of that
All right. Thanks,
everywhere.
Gilberto. Talk to you soon.
Like, qué bonito, ah. Thank you, Miles. Have a good
Thank you
one.
so much.
Pura vida. Nice to meet you,
Pleasure to
Julie.
meet you. Yeah,
See,
same.
anytime you
Likewise.
want to come here, just let us know. We're gonna be here waiting for you guys.
Thank you.